All right, we're here with Saad. Hi, Saad.
Hey, how's it going there?
Good, good. Good to have you on the Global Finance Summit here. I'm excited. A lot of people are excited to hear about your business, about you, about the Emirates, like so many questions already, and we haven't even started. So first, maybe a little bit about the background about yourself, and then we'll dive into Expense and the company.
Cool thing. Um, I'm based in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. I've been here for almost 5 years. Before that was in Bahrain and in Saudi Arabia, and I've run various different ventures over the last sort of 12 years in the Gulf. And on my latest venture, which is Xpence, a neobank for excuse me, for freelancers and SMEs, or for
Yeah.
entrepreneurs is probably.
I was reading all kinds of press about that. You have a co-founder, or I don't remember who's on the team.
Yeah, so I mean, like today, the team keeps growing. We're at just over 20 at the moment. I founded the business. We're a bunch of co-founders. So my CTO, Constantine, and then we've got our COO, Hassan Al-Hirs, who started one of the first digital banks in the region. Also got some family involved. My younger brother is our sort of Mr. Network. So we've got a really good team. Um, you know, we're from the region. We understand what happens over here, how it works. So yeah, and the team's growing day by day.
And how is the potential in terms of the region? You talk about the region. How is it filling into the need of the SMEs, the small businesses, the freelancers in the region?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and I would say pretty much all of my friends are involved in some business. I mean, everyone has a side hustle, right? You might have a 9 to 5 job, but then everyone also has a business on the side. And I think throughout, we're quite an entrepreneurial, as a region, people are quite entrepreneurial. Perhaps less like the kind of tech startups that we think of in the West, but small trading companies, there might be people doing freelance work, but there are a lot of businesses people are running on the side. And it's there, it's ingrained in people's DNA. So the opportunity here is great. I mean, like any nation, SMEs make up the backbone. They are the biggest employers, and there is a definite need within the region of where the countries have plans of how to wean the economy off of oil and make the GDP contribution from SMEs much bigger. So there is a push. You see it everywhere. In Saudi Arabia, you've got the fund of funds in Bahrain as well, and we see the same thing here with Hub 71 in Abu Dhabi and Area 2071 in Dubai. This real push for entrepreneurship across the region.
And in this ecosystem, you're building a new brand. How new is it? How long are you operating?
So expenses as a concept about 2 years old now. So I mean, obviously it's taken the regulations. Fintech really is in the very early stages in our region, and so it's taken a bit longer than people would have expected to come to market. But the generally speaking, we're seeing things really open up now. And I think that end of this year and next year, we're going to see a boom in fintech across the region. In SAMA, the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia, or the Central Bank of Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, everyone is pushing regulations to make it fintech friendly. And we're going to see the fruits of this very soon.
That's good to hear for fintech. So I'm looking at, I mean, I'm seeing that on your website, people can join the waiting list. So I'm curious how ready, when is it ready for the market? Are you on a beta phase? What's going on?
Yeah, good question. So we're actually going to start alpha testing in before the end of this month. So in a couple of weeks, we should be doing that, and then beta testing to follow shortly after that. The way that we've set things up at Xpence is that it's going to be a multi-market rollout. So even though I'm talking to you from Dubai today, alpha testing is taking place in Bahrain. We have, things set up to roll out in Saudi Arabia as well. So we have our banking partner there. We're going through our licensing process in the kingdom and here in the UAE as well. So the idea is that Bahrain has a Bahrain is one of the smaller Gulf states, but it's got a very open regulator. It's very friendly. It's a great place to set up and experiment from, and then bring it into the sort of the larger Gulf states, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So that's what we're planning to do. So hopefully, the first live Xpence accounts, but by the early next year is when our plan.
Do you in that space, do you have any, like, let's say, I don't know, competitors, other players that are in that space? Because I was reading about you a lot. Like, I was reading a lot of press about the big promise of this, and I don't know enough about other players in the region that serve and in a unique way, serve that segment in a unique way.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, what we've seen, let's say from the fintech players and from the incumbents, that there's been a lot of focus on creating digital products for the retail sector, for consumers. Very little focus on our customer segment, the micro and the small enterprises. Although there are a couple of products out now in the market. So one of the larger banks in the UAE, Mashreq, they released a product about a year ago called Mashreq Neo Biz. Emirates MBD, which is arguably one of the largest banks in the region, has a product coming out soon called E20. I'm not sure what stage they're at, but earlier this year, late last year, they were talking about going into beta. So we do know, and then there's probably other players, smaller players. There might be people in stealth mode at the moment, but we haven't seen another fintech coming out with a similar solution to ours. But that's not to say that perhaps someone is working on it. We just don't know about it.
Yes, and maybe we walk me through the user journey. I mean, just as an example of a need of a small, let's say, solo entrepreneur or small business on a day-to-day basis that you can solve. Even one feature that you think it's necessary in the market today.
I think, I think, I don't know how it's like where you are, but when we went into this COVID in the lockdown in late March, the only thing that was working were deliveries. So I mean, it was the startups. I don't know if you heard InstaShop, which was recently bought for $360 million. We lived off these guys. We lived off these deliveries. Now, if you don't have a card, if you don't have a way to pay online, if you don't have a way to accept payments online, during that sort of lockdown period, your business would be dead, right? I think from sort of end of March up until probably around August, I don't think I touched cash once, right? And that's a big thing, particularly in our region where we're so cash dependent, or where cash dominates payments so much. And I think that one of the things that what we're really focusing on at Xpence is what we're calling the contactless commerce. How can I do business with someone without actually physically meeting them? So from issuing an invoice to getting paid without ever having to actually meet or exchange or do any physical kind of contact. So I think that's one of the things that we're working quite hard on over at Xpence, and you know, we want to see people, you know, be able to accept digital payments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even in this summit, I mean, we talked to neobanks like that in Australia. We talked, of course, in the UK. You have Coconut, you have other services. Of course, in the US, you have Lily Bank and others that are going to the gig economy. You know, even in our summit, there are a few. I mean, things like, you know, taxes, things like invoicing, things like real pain of small
Exactly.
business. Right?
Exactly. And, you know, for us, you know, tax is a very new thing. So one of the, you know, the beauties of living in the Gulf has always been that it was tax free. But a year or two ago, you know, VAT was introduced, and you know, these are things that we as businesses have not been used to. And then all of a sudden, you know, we've got to deal with this. So, you know, things like creating virtual jars to segregate tax and things like that. Those are what we're trying to do is basically allow, you know, the business owner, the entrepreneur, to focus on building their business, focus on, you know, doing what matters, and sort of automating and taking, you know, these kind of issues, you know, away from them and let them happen automatically. You know, they, you know, rather than spending, you know, at the end of the week or at the end of the day, you know, oh, I got to spend 2-3 hours doing administration work, which I'll tell you, you know, 15 years ago when I started my first business in Saudi Arabia, that's what my weekends would be like, you know, going through receipts and issuing invoices. You know, I remember not even knowing what an invoice was. I mean, I came straight out of uni and started a business. I remember at the time, you know, Googling what an invoice looks like so that I could make a template. We didn't have Xero at the time or QuickBooks or anything like that. And I even remember that first invoice we issued actually got rejected by the customer because the customer said, oh, well, you're missing this from the invoice and you're missing that from the invoice. So what went from should have been paid in 45 days ended up being, you know, 90 plus because you've missed the invoicing cycles. So these are things, you know, like sending reminders to your customers, ensuring, you know, that purchase order numbers are in the invoices so that you do get paid quicker. These are all things that are built directly into Xpence. So you don't need to, you know, we're not at this stage relying on a third party to connect and to do the invoicing. It's all built there directly in Xpence itself.
I was about to ask if you're connecting to a third party for, yeah.
It's obviously that's in the plans. You know, you will be able to export statements and things too if you are, say, using a Zoho Books or QuickBooks or Xero or something like that. But at this stage, you know, we want them to be able to do as much as they can from within the application.
Yes. Tell me about investments. Did you get an investment? Are you raising? Like, what's the status?
Yeah, so so to date we've raised about just under $2 million in 2 rounds. Money from locally and internationally, majority of it coming from Saudi Arabia. Is it interesting? You know, we're still, you know, in the early stages of you know, the whole startup scene and you know, the idea of investing into startups, and you know, we're very real estate dominated over here. People would invest into real estate, and now we're starting to see things change. And I think, you know, one of the big things that made a difference for us was when when Uber bought Kareem last year. And I think that for everyone, you know, that was a real sort of turning point in the market, that people believed that, yes, local homegrown startups can become unicorns, can get acquired. And at the same time, you had Soup getting acquired by Amazon, Payfort becoming, Amazon as well. So there have been some really interesting things. And like I mentioned earlier in about InstaShop, for example. So we're now starting to see some really nice exits that homegrown startups are doing. And so I think that, there is that faith or that confidence in startups now. So it's been and then raising funds during COVID has been fun as well. It's been challenging.
But I'm just completely in love with what you do, with the big vision here. I understand the numbers, I
Thank
understand
you.
the economy is going there. As you mentioned COVID, even before COVID, that the numbers are there, and you're able to serve these people with a real good offering, product offering here. And I totally understand. I mean, we didn't discuss numbers of the potential in the markets, but it's obvious. I mean, and that's why the big banks that you mentioned are also trying to get into this space. And I guess one of the options was from the beginning for you maybe to start with a bank, with a big
Mm.
bank, or start by your own. And yeah.
That it's an interesting point. I mean, look, you. So we are very much following the neobank model, where we are relying on an existing financial institution to use their licenses. So very much like if you look at the early days, 5 years ago, when the Revoluts of the world were launching, they were piggybacking on someone else's EMI license, and they had a bin sponsor. So imagine we are where Western European neobanks were 5 years ago. And that's the model that we have to use to get up, because digital banking licenses have only just started in the market. And, the capital requirements are huge. We want to be quick. We want to be nimble. And one of the ways of being able to scale rapidly across this market is to partner with financial institutions in each country. So you have to remember, unlike the European Union, we don't have the beauty of passporting. We need to go to each regulator. We need to, then there are issues of on-soil data processing and all these kind of things, that we have to deal with. So we do have to work with them. And now what we're seeing, compared to, I would say, this time last year, that banks are much more open to work with us. It has been a slow process, but we're now starting to see more and more that, what banks are seeing as less as competitors, but more as potential, partners.
Amazing. Before we are finishing, of course, I have to maybe end up with a more personal question. In these days, we are hearing a lot about banks from my country. Of course, we're talking about fintech nations, and a lot of bank delegations are flying from Israel to the Emirates to form these fintech bridges, as we call them, the fintech nation bridges.
Yeah.
How is like the perspective from there on those economic delegations? I mean, what is the interest of the Emirates side?
Well, look, I think it's an interesting question. Today we had a call with one of the largest, I think the largest bank from Israel, and we spoke to the head of fintech and fintech investment at the bank, and at the beginning of the call, it was a bit surreal. I mean, people from other parts of the world might not understand, what it means for having this call between us today, because this is unimaginable. This would have been unimaginable a few days ago, right? So, whereas if you were sitting in London and you're having a call with Tel Aviv, it's not a big deal, right? So, that definitely has been I think really like I don't know how to explain it, but it's been historical for us. We took some screenshots and stuff, and we said, this is something we don't know where it's going to go, whether there's something further from this, but at least we did this, and that from a personal perspective, a big milestone. But what interest is there? I think that one, the tech scene in Israel and the quality of tech coming out of there is amazing. I think that that I'm sure what we're gonna see is investment going both sides. I think that we're opening up the opportunity for VCs to come from the UAE and invest into Israeli startups and vice versa. That was one of our conversations today about possible investments into our into our venture. But I think that's what I think that that's one of the things we're going to see. I think there's I'm looking at it from a startup perspective, and then obviously it just opens up more doors, more opportunities for commerce between the two countries, and you need to have that banking. The banking channels need to be open between the two countries. I remember a few years ago, I think it was on Fiverr, I was trying to do some work through Fiverr, and I couldn't pay using my Emirati card, right?
I was about to mention Fiverr. It's unbelievable. We just thought about the same thing because, of course, because of the gig economy, the freelance, but because I'm hiring right now a person from your region on Fiverr, and we didn't discuss the fact that I'm Israeli, but Fiverr is Israeli. Again, the platform allows somebody like the one I just hired to get paid. He doesn't have a PayPal account. He doesn't have any other way of paying him. And I'm paying him for Fiverr. I'm hiring.
Yeah.
Fiverr. But sorry, I just,
No, it's fine. The point I was making was that, a few years ago, I was working on something, and I'd selected a freelancer on Fiverr that was based in Israel, and it just would not take my payment. I then had to use one of my non-Emirati cards to be able to fulfill the payment. So I mean, these are some of the opportunities that are going to open up. And I was reading today that they're already tourists on their way from Israel to the UAE. So let's see how it all pans out. I mean, I think the important thing is that it can't solely be. We need to see it spread across the region, not just because what effect does this have in the other Gulf states, within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? Right. How will it affect things? If you talk about the markets, Pakistan, right, which is next door to us, 250 million people. It's a huge market. It's a market to go into. What are their thoughts on all of this? So I think it's great for the two nations, for the UAE and Israel. But I think that especially for us, we just need to look at it in the broader context of our region as well. And inshallah, it's time. It will be. We'll see how things turn out.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much. A lot of people waiting to hear your story. Of course, they can join, right? They can join the wait list on the website. How can they follow you?
I mean, we're they can go to our website at Xpence.co and join the waiting list. We're most active on Instagram, so please feel free to follow us on Instagram at Xpence. And just keep a lookout for us, and we'll be up and running in no time.
Amazing. I will follow all the partnerships, all the roadmap that you have, and good luck from all my heart. It's amazing, and I can't wait to see people start using it and bringing value to those businesses. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nir. It's been a great pleasure to be on your panel today, and thanks a lot.
Thank you.